All right, so we're ready. Julita, thank you so much for being here again.
Maybe I should put it down like this.
That looks good. That's perfect.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. You were just mentioning before we were recording that they're putting a moratorium on AI research now?
It's on generative AI research,
Okay.
like the type of bots, AI bots,
Yeah.
which you can chat with, which answer you intelligently with very well phrased answers, or which generate pictures or videos which can fake your voice. So ChatGPT race. Right now, it's an arms race. Basically, everybody is trying to develop their own. OpenAI published the first one back in November, and since then, it was Microsoft. Google scrambled to reveal their own and made a big flop because it had a factual error.
Oh no! I didn't hear about this. What happened?
Well, they asked it something which was a factual question, and it got a wrong answer. So it led to a big humiliation, and the stocks of Google dropped down. In my personal opinion, actually, it was a excellent demonstration, better than the others, which show how good ChatGPT is and this kind of bots, how good they are, because they are very good in a human-like language, but they're not very good in factual information.
Okay.
So they make errors. And actually demonstrated exactly this. You cannot trust what they tell you. They tell it to you in a very convincing way, but it doesn't mean that it's true. In some cases it's true. In most cases it's true, but they make mistakes all the time.
Sorry, I'll just pause. I think you said you wanted to have your phone out just so you could see the time. Yeah?
Okay, yeah.
Or I can set a timer if you'd like as well.
I'll just get it. It's here.
Perfect. Okay, great.
Okay, I'll just only shut it so it doesn't ring during the interview.
Perfect. So they're not always correct. Is that just because they're basing their information, like they're not judging the trueness of the information, they're just getting it from another source?
Yeah, they are basically, generative AI works by recombining data which is collected from the web, basically. Like it's collected, with the explosion of social media back around 2010. There is so much information now online from all of us, from all of our posts, from the YouTube videos, from chats, because it's not clear what happens when we chat on Messenger or Signal or WhatsApp or all of these tools. They get stored somewhere. So all of this, plus the enormous amount of written documents which are stored on the cloud, Google Cloud and Dropbox and Microsoft. It's tons of information available, plus the development, of course, of very fast microchips. They allow to generate, and new algorithms, of course, new AI algorithms. They allow unprecedented level of knowledge. Well, knowledge to be generated. It's not human knowledge. This is basically data which is analyzed for patterns, for statistical relationships, and then the algorithm can generate very plausible texts which are similar to what exists in the huge database.
Right. Okay.
So basically, it generates similar text to human-generated text without knowing much about the facts or what is the underlying knowledge. Now, there is AI stream which actually cares exactly about this. There is semantic web, there is linked data, which is based on ontologies. Ontologies are a concept from psychology, from philosophy, which is basically the science or the knowledge of things, how things relate to each other.
Right.
So these are logical relationships like aggregation, like this is part of that, or something is an example of, like specialization, something is example of a more general concept, or kinship relationships, right? So all of these are relationships which are functional, procedural, like this leads to this, logical relationships as well. So all of these data can be represented in this way, but the color and then you can have, with such represented data, you can have much more reasoning and more solid, truthful, consequential thinking and generating of results, which makes sense. Like with generative AI, it's more based on statistical properties, and but it's smarter than that. It's much smarter. So it generates different variants, and then it basically competes with itself. So these examples are shut down by by another part of the algorithm.
Okay.
And it's like a mini evolution, right? It's like survival of the fittest example. So it's very complicated, and the problem is that even the developers, those people who create the algorithms, they cannot exactly predict what the algorithm will come up with. So it makes it non-deterministic and certainly not explainable. So you don't know how it came up with this. But when it comes with the result, it sounds wonderful. It sounds like as if you're talking to a person.
Yeah, it's very, very similar. My friend was showing it to me, and I was quite surprised by how much it felt like you were talking to a person, you know. And then he showed me with the Chat GPT, at least with that one, he asked it to, I can't remember what he did. He did something funny. Like he said, write a rap, like a pop song, as if Shakespeare had written it. And it was hilarious because it actually felt like it was a rap written by Shakespeare. It was really weird.
It writes poems, yes, it writes poems. I was reading on a Bulgarian newspaper how a Bulgarian poet tried to generate a plausible poem in English. So about something ridiculous, like something like St. Patrick's Day or something like that. Yeah. And it generated a quite good poem in a 5-step yamp, you know, very poetically, quite it could have been written by a human, right? Quite competent poem. And then somebody else in the comments to this article, somebody said, okay, I tried in Bulgarian, because at the time when this guy was writing the article, probably the Bulgarian version was not so well developed. Well, the Bulgarian was even better. In Bulgarian, the poem was even nicer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. So it works in different languages as well. Yeah, it has tons of data from the whole world. It works. It's not programmed to do it in a particular language. It's just fed by the data in a particular language, and if you have the data, it fires away, and it produces very good results.
So you said when it's trying to get a result for you, it's essentially creating multiple and then deciding on which one is the best.
Yeah, this is one of the possible algorithms. There are many other algorithms. These are deep networks, deep neural networks, which are self-organizing. Basically, you can say that I want a network with 5 layers, or with 5 or 10 layers, or I don't know what, and then you give it examples, training examples, and then based on the examples, it adjusts the network. The network is basically little nodes connected with probabilities,
right,
with which adjust themselves to fit the incoming data. So the more data you feed it, the better these probabilities are calculated. And then maybe it generates new nodes or new layer if needed to be able to distinguish between certain examples, which obviously before it wasn't able to distinguish.
Yeah.
in the end, the more data, the better prediction it is. It will classify the example, and then when it classifies an example, it will match it to another set of examples. So it will then retrieve from those examples fragments of text which match your example. So, for example, if you fire a query or a request, write me a poem on this and this topic, it will run it through this network, which is already pre-trained on many other examples, and it will find something which is similar to that.
Okay.
Right? Or not one thing, it will find many different examples. And then, because it has what actually trains is a language model. So it's a model of how to generate sentences in the appropriate language based on the training data, which are plausible and which actually kind of make sense. So it will retrieve from other documents fragments and recombine them to produce something which relates to what your query was. And then when you ask it to regenerate, it will do something else, and if you say do it more creative, it will pull to a different subnetwork, which is more in the style of Shakespeare or in the style of I don't know what.
Okay, so that makes sense. So when people say that they're language models or language AIs, they're saying that the machine learning is based on language and it's generating language answers and just fitting data into that.
Yes, something like that. So I'm probably not even explaining it correct because it's so complicated, you know, and you need to get an expert in deep learning. I'm not, but they can probably explain it maybe better, the basic mechanism. But these are really complex mechanisms. Yeah, and that's the problem really, because they are. It's hard to predict what they will produce. It all depends on the data which they used for training, and the speed with which they're developing is horrifying. Like I was reading yesterday in the news article on Globe and Mail, they had a special insert about generative AI, and they were saying that the ChatGPT 2, which was released 2017, I think, was trained on 1.7 billion pieces of data. Then the ChatGPT 3, which they released in November now, which everybody has been using for free, was 170 or something like that, 170 million data.
Million or billion?
Billion. Oh. And then now, million. Sorry, million. Oh, okay. And then now the ChatGPT 4 is on 110 billion or something like that. So it's like an exponential jump in the amount of data. Now this one you have to pay $20 to use, but it's still very cheap. I didn't know that. Yeah,
I haven't been using it. So.
And it's totally worth the money. If you have a task, you know, people use it for anything. You can use it to generate for example, you can give it your resume and it can generate a beautiful, much better resume for you. You can generate a PowerPoint presentation with this. You can this interview, you know, you can generate your questions for this interview with this. It will give you very good questions for me, and it can generate my answers to this, probably better than what I can give you.
Yeah, you get a full script. I heard about that because I heard about somebody posed the question of what will happen to content creation on the internet. Because if you're like a YouTube creator, for example, and you want to make videos, you could have it script the videos and then write out all your scenes for you and tell you how to build a video, and you could have it do that 100 times in a day or more. So
and now there are algorithms which are basically using the same principle, but not for text but for voice. So Vali, I think, is such an algorithm which actually you need only 3 minutes of human voice recording, and then it trains the network and it can generate anything. You type a sentence or give it a text and it will speak this text with the voice which you trained it with. So you can basically completely fake our interview with my voice, because now you have more than 3 minutes.
Yeah, we're gonna have a lot more than 3 minutes.
So you can make it speak whatever you want me to speak.
Wow. I've seen a lot of those, a lot of fake conversations with the last three presidents.
Yeah, Obama and George W. Bush and
Yeah.
Trump as well. Yeah, you can make very um, believable fakes, and that's a big danger, like, because if it's so available, like before it was available to maybe very well-funded agencies or um, you know media producers or hackers who really know how to do these things.
Yeah.
Now anybody can do it, so you can imagine what will happen. Like the social media will be full of fake content, and it will be very hard to distinguish. Now, of course, they're talking about training AI to recognize what is a fake from what is true.
Right.
But again, who has the time to run and check? It's like fact check on fake news. Fake news are entertaining, they're fun. Who bothers to check them if they're true?
Yeah.
People hit retweet or reshare because they're cool, funny.
Yeah, they just read the headline and it's
for the ridiculousness or whatever.
Yeah.
The same thing will happen with all these videos, and it becomes like people are talking about the post-truth reality. We'll have to learn, if this continues in this way, we will have to learn to live without a notion of truth. Actually, we can't trust what we see on the internet. We can only trust what we see in real life, which suddenly will shrink our horizon very much. Currently, we get news, we can see everything, videos of things as they happen. Now, we can't trust this, mass shootings or whatever. We don't know if it's not fake.
Yeah, you're not going to know anymore. I was curious. I wonder what you think. I was curious about the fact that because there will be so much AI content and they'll be able to generate so many new conversations and fakes and like the stuff we're already seeing. I wonder if people will value content that they know was actually created by a person. Like, how Twitter and Instagram have like the blue check mark or whatever. I wonder if it'll get to a point where like everybody that's a real person has a blue check mark and people will value verified human content over AI content just because they know it's a person making it. I wonder if people won't care.
Definitely. This thing is happening, as you know, with Musk giving now blue checks if you pay $10,000. I don't know how. I forgot what is the current going rate. The question is now. It's a question of trust. Who gives these blue check marks?
Yeah.
Do you trust that they are given to real entities, or are they given to entities which can pay? How do you know that it's not propaganda paid by some rogue government?
Well, I'm sure.
And they have the money to pay for the blue check mark, and it's fake, nevertheless.
That's where I was going.
So it's a matter of trust. And trust is becoming a very scarce commodity nowadays. And that's a real danger. It started before AI. It started with social media because fakes were there before generative AI. It was there has always been fakes, in the past, in some regimes, they would take a picture of the Politburo, for example, and then somebody falls out of favor, and they will the photographers masterfully will kind of delete this person from the picture because they're no longer in favor, they're no longer, so this has been there before with much more cumbersome and easy to spot technology, and now it becomes really tough for humans. It's impossible to spot it, but for technology, I think it will be possible to spot it. It's only a matter now of cost, how much it will cost to spot the technology, to verify it. Second would be, do you trust who is doing the checking? Can people do the checking themselves? Like, let's say people will trust only themselves. They don't trust anybody else. They don't trust governments. They don't trust Elon Musk or whatever, but they trust themselves. Okay, but will people bother to do this? Do people really care enough about the truth? Or will they be lazy and just consume passively what
Yeah.
is served to them. And that's a real problem. In a way, you know, we live in a democratic society when there is no omniscient government which takes decisions for what is good for the citizens.
And who knows best, right?
Who knows best? Yes. So we kind of we have a everybody decides for themselves. Everybody is his own criterion for trust, and look to where it has led us without AI. Just with some AI because of the filter bubbles on social media, which kind of group us together into like-minded groups when we basically they filter away whatever we perceive offensive, so keep us in our comfort zone. But it led to this huge polarization, which we're seeing political everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's a big social problem. Now, with how this generative AI help to this, it just makes it easier to produce such fakes, makes it harder to spot, and maybe increases the distrust. So that's like every technology is not inherently evil or good. It's just the way you use it, and it's we humans who decide how to use the technology. And it's the task of a society to decide what is, which technologies are useful and helpful, and which are dangerous.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see. Are you experiencing anything personally in your work in academia? Is like the students bring it up, or
of course, it's a big question in universities. You know, now all the big economic think tanks are predicting which jobs will be eliminated by AI, and the predictions are very frightful. Basically, they're saying that nearly 80% of the intellectual jobs will be removed. Basically, they can be done by AI, and a lot of people will lose their jobs, and they see academia and universities teachers' jobs as one of the first. But not every single one, but probably the humanities and social sciences, where not social sciences, maybe literature and the arts as well, because generative AI in arts is another very, very fraught and frightful area. They're very good, you know, it can imitate different styles of artists and so on. And how the main immediate consequences. Many of these disciplines depend on evaluating students' essays. Basically, they try to teach students to write, to create a meaningful argument, to make a logical argument, you know, which is also well written and nice to. This is actually the point, and it's a very hard job to teach people to write well. So how do you teach them? Well, they have to do a lot of assignments, writing essays and so on, and they are graded. And basically, if you graduate in a degree in English or, I don't know, law, political science, you know, all of these areas, you need to write essays. Now, with ChatGPT, they do a very good job. It can get you a good grade. It can get you a B, maybe not the A, but the B to B minus, they say, report recently. It passes the bar exam.
I saw that. That's crazy.
Yeah. So lawyers, for example, they say the majority of the lawyers may not be needed anymore. Now, of course, there is another trend which says, we teachers have to adapt to this and use this as a tool. I do this in my class. Like, for example, I tell my students, use ChatGPT to massage, to make it nicely written, because I don't want to proofread very cumbersome writing.
Of course not, right?
Because I'm teaching them in different things. I teach them the point is not to teach them how to write in English. Most of my students are international students, their English is not their first language. So writing in English is a double challenge. First of all, how to organize it, how to put the logical argument, how to write it in proper grammar English is another big challenge for them.
Yeah.
Right? But if they they can use ChatGPT. Use ChatGPT to generate your first set of ideas. And then you decide. Don't take it and serve me what ChatGPT generated. Just take it, massage it, rearrange it, say what you wanted to say. Ask it to regenerate, emphasizing certain points. Leave the tedious writing job, but you take charge of the idea part.
Yeah.
So this thing can be very useful for a teacher because it also relieves the teacher from reading horrific English, and it's real pain, reading a thesis where you're so bogged down in the grammar and the wrong words, and that you cannot even get to evaluate the idea of the work. And really the point is to evaluate the idea, the logical flow, and so on. So the problem is that ChatGPT is very good in the logical flow as well. It organizes it quite persuasively. Now the facts might be wrong, so it may be completely wrong argument based on wrong facts, but it sounds certainly convincing. So here again, the role of a person is to check the facts. For example, I had in one of my students, I asked him to do a search for a particular area, personalized persuasive technology, generate me a short 500 words essay on personalized, what is the existing work in personalized persuasive technology. And it generated a very good introduction. Like this, you could take and put as an introduction to an article. So I said, well, this doesn't look very good. Like maybe you should add some references here because, of course, it's scientific writing. You have to add references. So he said, okay, I'll ask ChatGPT to find me references. So it did. It found, so give me some references. It produced references.
Were they scientific or were they just...
They were completely fake. Oh. They didn't exist. So if you go and search, well, the interesting thing was the titles were correct. The titles exist, but these are not, the authors exist. The authors are real authors, but the titles are fabricated.
Wow.
They even have DOI. DOI is like the...
They give it DOI numbers?
If you go, the DOI is real. You go to the DOI and you get a medical paper, something completely different.
Wow.
So completely fake references. So when you come down to the facts...
That's so interesting.
It's fake. You can't trust it at all. But the writing, the cosmetic stuff, because when you write a paper, you have some facts, you have some results, you have some references, and this is the real factual part. But you have to dress it in a convincing, well-written article, because otherwise your article will be rejected. Nobody will be able to read it and understand it. They won't buy your argument, right? So it can write the argument, but based on no facts. So I have a real fear that actually we will be witnessing an explosion of fake scientific papers because it's so easy to generate them and it's so hard to peer review them. Currently in research, actually, this is one of the biggest hurdles. There's so many people doing science all over the world. Like China is producing maybe hundreds of thousands of articles every month. Oh, wow. And not only that, every nation, it's now international. Science is not done just by few Western nations. The whole world is producing articles. And the bottleneck is peer review. This is basically the standard, what makes an article valid. It has to go through a human judgment. Several peers, 2-3 reviewers have to read it and to say and to check it. Now it's already quite hard with this amount of papers. Every day I'm receiving at least 5 invitations to review papers.
Wow.
And I say no to all of them because I have no time. This is unpaid work, first of all. Yeah. And second, I just don't have free time to review a paper, to understand it, to check it. It takes a day, to do it properly. So a lot of reviewers are doing it quickly, they just
Just
skim
trying to get
it
them in and
over,
out.
see if it's well written, but they don't go to check the facts. To reproduce the experiment is close to impossible. You cannot reproduce the experiment to check if really the results are correct and not fabricated. So I can imagine that there will be a flood of fake papers, and they will get published because they sound nice, because they're nicely argued, nicely written, ChatGPT, and everything will be fake. And then what will our science be based on?
Do you think that will result in a greater criteria or a stricter criteria for getting a paper published in a journal? Like maybe the journals will just have to up their standards and
There has to be AI to filter away papers which are generated by AI. And there has to be AI algorithms which will check the facts. They'll have to check references, for example. This is one big giveaway. I check always now the references. Is this a real reference?
Yeah.
But then you have a review paper with 500 references. It's impossible to check manually every single one.
Yeah.
So I think science is facing a big crisis. People are not talking yet about this. So what I'm telling you now is original. I think I haven't at least seen it. I'm very actively checking the literature about this because I'm teaching a class on fairness, accountability, transparency and ethics of AI. It's a small graduate class with 6 students, but very nice, very active and good students.
That's great.
Really.
So a graduate class means that they're going for their master's or
They're
their
masters
PhD?
and PhD
Okay.
students. Yeah.
Can you tell me more about that class? What does that look like?
Sure. Well, this is a kind of a experimental class.
Okay.
Like in the university, we can do classes for when it's a very cutting edge area or area which is really new. We want to try out first the class how it works. You don't know the ultimate material. You try to see
like
how
a
it
test group.
works. So like a test. So we have a special category of classes called in computer science. There's 898 classes. These are kind of experimental classes. You can offer this class twice only. So this is now the second time I'm offering it. I offered it once 4 years ago before COVID, and it was completely different. We're talking about different things, even though fairness and bias is a very important issue in AI, and this is really important in the training of ChatGPT-like systems as well, because these systems are as good as their data is.
Yeah.
And when you collect data, there is always some kind of bias in the data. Like, where do you get the data from? Who is producing this data? What features in the data are considered important?
Yeah, it's really, really interesting because, it seems like it would be unbiased, but I watched a video of people, they looked up 2 different athletes, and one ChatGPT gave a response for one athlete that was only about their sport and their ability, and the other athlete, it focused a lot on their political ideas, which was really interesting because they asked it about the person as an athlete, but it decided to let them know about ideas that probably right now most people would have thought were a little bit strange, but it had nothing to do with him as an athlete. So there's obviously some bias there.
Well, it can come because of the query. So it basically combined the internal centrifuge,
Yeah.
and the algorithm combined and pulled out things which are more relevant to politics. So it may not be a bias in ChatGPT. So one solution to bias is to get more data, more data. So if you have billions of data, the chances it will be less biased. And still, apparently, it's still possible to bias it by, for example, people who, because ChatGPT is using the data which you ask, the query which you ask, is used as training data as well.
Okay.
So if you accept an answer, it's used as a training data as well.
Right, so it deems that as a successful answer.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. So you can imagine now that people who want to manipulate the system will start drilling down into particular area. So they can go into political area. It could be ultra right or ultra left, or it could be homophobic, or any kind of bias to steer the system into this area, and then accepting answers which are what the system generates. The system will try to adapt to your query, so it will pull out from its vast data. It will generate something which fits your query, then it comes back and it kind of snowballs.
Right.
So it may create more bias. Of course, if you have billions of data, there has to be a lot of effort to bias it further into this direction. But I wouldn't preclude it. Plus, if you think about it, most of the data is generated. For example, currently young people are most people who are using TikTok and to view videos, So maybe there would be an age bias versus older generation stuff which old people watch, maybe, I don't know, movies from the 30s or, classical music. I don't know, I'm now just firing examples, but maybe they're not accurate. Maybe these are well represented in ChatGPT. But you can imagine that data which relates more to a different generation may not be so well represented. And so there will be bias in the data. Bias is a big problem. This was particularly obvious with the early bot. If you recall, there was a Tai. It was a very early bot that
I don't remember that one.
Tai. It was, I think it was Google. It was maybe 7-8 years ago. They launched a chatbot. Very much this idea of chatbot, intelligent bot, is pretty old, and I think this inspired the movie. She.
Yeah. Was this the bot that was on Twitter? Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I think so. It was on. I don't know. I forgot.
I can't remember who it was, but there was one company made one that went on Twitter.
Maybe it was on Twitter.
And
yeah.
This one, the one I'm thinking of, ended up becoming like a Nazi.
A Nazi, yes, exactly, because it was just a group of users who just decided to attack it and to drill it to this kind of conversations with it, and it learned from the conversations.
Right.
And so it is it's also reinforcement learning. This is another type of learning, which is learning as it goes. So it's not just on a fixed data set, but it incrementally learns from the interaction with users. So then you can imagine that there would be targeted attempts to sway it in particular direction. And then, of course, there are a whole bunch of other problems of people getting emotionally attached to these bots. People are very easily influenced. We tend to anthropomorphize a lot of things. Like people even anthropomorphize their cars, in a way. Or they love it and they don't want to part with it, even though it's time already to. Or their cats and dogs and so on and so on. They attribute human-like features to them, and you can imagine a bot which responds to you. And very soon, actually, there are already replica. You have probably heard about replica. These are bots which are actually with a face, with a kind of even augmented reality, 3D faces, which talk to you. And a lot of people take them as intimate partners. They talk to them about deeply emotional things. About sex, of course. Always is, but
there's always going to be
it's always going to be, but people become emotionally dependent. And there was recently something that they decided, because the company got alerted that this may have very bad consequences. They decided to make the system less compassionate. So actually,
I remember this.
Yeah, they tweaked the algorithm, and then people really suffered because
they got really angry.
They got like, she's leaving me. Like who is she?
Some people, they were like, this is my girlfriend that you're taking away. That's how people felt.
Yes, just like in the movie. In some sense, these movies about AI have been quite prescient.
Have you seen Ex Machina?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yes.
That's an
Yes,
interesting
that
one.
was when the guy reproduced his dead wife. Was it?
I don't know if it was his dead wife,
Was
but
it?
this is like a guy that's locked himself in or not locked himself, but he's got a compound out
In
in the middle
somewhere
of
in the
nowhere.
mountains, in
Yeah,
a very beautiful. Yes,
he
I
brings
saw
somebody
this
in to
one.
do a Turing test.
Yes,
Yeah,
I did. I remember
yeah,
that. Yes.
that one was interesting. That one had a little bit more of a darker end to it.
Scary.
But
Yes,
yeah,
very scary.
yeah.
Yeah.
You said so in this class too that you discuss fairness. And
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
how do you look at fairness and AI? Like, are you looking at?
Well, we have been so a lot of the research which we have looked at is about recommender systems. And recommender systems, this is a classical example of AI. You know, these are systems which, like Amazon was one of the first which launched it, but also Netflix. You know how they recommend you movies, and so examples of fairness. For example. In a movie or in Spotify, for example, you get a bias towards more popular artists,
Right.
because popular artists are increasing consumer satisfaction, and the algorithm tends to, even if they tailor everything to your personal interests, and they do this by correlating you with millions of other people, and they find people who are just like you and who they recommend you stuff which they like, which you will likely like, and so on and so on. Still, the predominantly popular content gets it's hard to get new artists. So, is it fair for the system? This is the so-called, first of all, cold start problem. Like for a new artist to get popular on Spotify, it's impossible unless somehow they make a breakthrough in a unknown way, unless they somehow manage to get popularity magically.
Yeah.
You know, and then kind of it starts snowballing, and they become popular and get there is no clear recipe, you know, to become popular. So how to make the algorithm maybe seed some unpopular artists to make it more fair, to give them a chance. So this would be fairness. Another example, there is a system called Kiva, which is a micro loan system, which allows people to make loans to individuals in different countries. You know, for example, somebody in Africa wants to buy a goat, you know, and they need $1,000 and or $100, I don't know, and you can donate. Well, it's not like a donation. You're giving the money and you will get it back, but it's not like investing money in a company. It's you're giving, maybe, I don't know even if they charge you can get interest back,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it's kind of helping somebody to get started. So they found that actually some countries are very popular and get a lot of donations, but other countries don't.
It just doesn't work that well for them.
It doesn't, because the people who are familiar with the site, who know the site, they're usually interested in particular countries for some reasons, and they support projects from those countries. And
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
yeah. So somebody maybe who's made it in the West, from India or from some African country, they will sponsor people from their country rather than
send money back home.
Yeah. And it's natural, you know. This is kind of, people have this emotional and allegiance to, you know, people who are just like him, homophily. But then there are, of course, projects which never get funding.
Right.
So fairness would be to provide support and to encourage people to sponsor such projects as well. Another thing is when you have decision support systems. Now, decision support systems are a class of recommender systems where they, for example, help employer to pick from 300 applicants for a job. So how does it rank the applicants, the algorithm? So it's like a search engine, but it's decision support because it basically helps the person decide or who to call for an interview. Or for example, for judges, this usually the classical example is judges who make decision of who to give parole to. if they have somebody arrested, do they get parole or not, or who gets released earlier from jail because.
And AI is being used in those decisions.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
A lot of AI is used in this because they take statistical data. They correlate the case of the particular prisoner and they with others, and they see statistically what is the chance of this person breaking their parole.
Wow.
So they will give recommendation. Now, guess what? Because there are statistical likelihood that particular populations are overrepresented in prison. So if the prisoner is of this population, there will be much more data about this race or this particular population, and they will they may get a different solution, different decision than somebody from a different race will get.
Yeah.
Right, even though the person from a different race may be completely much higher risk.
Yeah.
Actually, there is not enough data.
Wow,
Right.
that's really interesting. I had no idea that it was already being used in the judicial system.
It is used in. So I don't know about Canada, but in the U.S., in many counties, they're using such algorithms, and in a way, people are interested in using them because they make the task easier. In every case, it's a very complicated decision. It's kind of, you don't have a crystal ball to predict what is going to happen in the future. So when you have a machine which tells you, oh, this is a safer bet than this other one, the likelihood is this amount of likelihood that this person will offend, it's very tempting to delegate the decision to the system.
Yeah.
It's so this is an important thing for the adoption, an important factor for adoption of these systems. So how do you still convey to people that they shouldn't delegate the responsibility? Just like a student who is trying to pass an assignment generated by ChatGPT as their assignment. Well, they can do this, but there are risks. It may be entirely wrong, and it's their responsibility. They're going to get the failing grade, not the ChatGPT, right? And the same is with the judge. So over trusting the system is bad. So fairness is an issue in e-commerce. Which sellers get their goods among the top results, right, of Amazon? A lot of people are looking at the top 10. They compare the reviews of the top 10. They will not go further down into other results. Amazon basically doesn't even allow you to do this. They show you other stuff. They don't show you the full list of items which matches your query. They show you a subset. They eliminate a lot of new options which maybe don't have enough reviews. They are just new to the market. Fairness. In addition, there is a lot of manipulation that can happen. An unethical company can reorder the products according to what is profitable for them.
I think that happens a lot. Too.
Yeah.
And people buy views a lot too. You were talking about like getting popularity on a platform. People will pay for plays on Spotify or views on YouTube. So it's really interesting.
There was this case a few years ago of was it a restaurant? It was on TripAdvisor, a restaurant in UK, which actually didn't exist. But this guy decided to show that the TripAdvisor system is flawed. So he started on Reddit a big campaign. Please rate my restaurant. He explained his purpose. He posted this restaurant, and because there is no live inspection, everybody on Reddit ganged up to make this the top rated restaurant in London. And they made so many ratings and fake reviews that it really went to the top of TripAdvisor's restaurant recommended list in London, non-existent restaurant.
Yeah, that's incredible. Especially now because it's becoming easier to do that without getting other people to do it too. With AI and all these bots, you can just get computers to make these ratings for you.
Especially you can with ChatGPT, you can generate very easily a review.
Yeah.
So, for example, I can imagine, and because ChatGPT gives API, I can imagine that TripAdvisor will add a ChatGPT functionality for write my review, so that people who are lazy and don't want to write a review, they put a 4-star rating, and then they see a generated ChatGPT review, and they can accept it, or maybe say regenerate, generates another one. Okay, close, boom, posted.
Yeah. Yeah, there's going to be so many applications.
Because, it matches a human need. People are naturally lazy, I think. No, it's not just this, it's efficiency. We are, like every organism, we strive for efficiency. And efficiency is expending less energy, less typing, less thinking as well. The ideal state is passively looking, binge watching movies or TikTok videos.
Yeah.
That's what people seem to like to do. We kind of very easily addicted to a stream of things.
Yeah. Well, especially when all that stuff is becoming almost free. It's so accessible now too. So it's very easy to just gorge yourself on junk content all day. So
yeah, and that's actually a problem with the ChatGPT. And I think this letter, which came a couple of days ago, signed by the leaders actually in AI, those people who created the algorithms based on which these systems are working. For example, our Canadian Joshua Bengio, who is a professor at the University of Montreal in AI, together with Jeffrey Hinton, they actually created these deep learning algorithms. Jeff Hinton works at Google now, and Joshua Bengio leads an institute funded by Google, Mila, I think. But he is really concerned about potential negative effects of AI. So he and Elon Musk as well, and Wozniak, one of the co-creators of Apple, plus another, originally 1,200. Oh, and Yuval Harari, who is maybe you have heard.
I'm actually just reading. I'm reading his book right now. Sapiens.
Sapiens, Sapiens, and then Homo Deus. Homo Deus is even better than Sapiens.
Okay, I'll get that one next.
They're wonderful books. He's a historian, but he thinks about the future of human civilization. So Homo Deus is very much about the sort of AI we're talking about now.
And so he's been a part of this letter as well?
He co-signed this letter as well. So a lot of luminaries signed this letter of concern, and they're asking for a moratorium, 6 months, stop all research, stop training these algorithms. It's not enough, in my opinion. It's not enough. Society will not get organized so quickly, because the idea is just to give society a little bit of time to decide whether they want these systems and whether the negative consequences of this, because they're highly disruptive. They're so disruptive that so many things will break due to this, to these systems, that we need to adapt. We need to figure out whether we want them or we don't want them, and maybe we should put a moratorium completely on the development of this kind of AI until a time when we're ready.
Maybe with regulations or
with regulations, with regulations. So regulations are already starting, and they're starting from different levels. For example, one of the image generation programs, and I forgot now what is the name of this one. There's so many. It's not DALL-E. It's not.
There's so many of them.
There is one which is very much used for games to create also augmented reality. It's very good, but I forgot what its name. Maybe it will come to my mind later. They now have stopped it. They're not allowing anybody anymore to use it at the moment.
The company has decided
the
that?
Company decided that they just shut it down at the moment. Now they may release it again, but for the moment they stopped it. Many universities have banned it. In the US, many universities have forbidden it. University of Montreal, we had an invited speaker in my class from the University of Montreal. They have banned it as well, maybe due to the influence of Joshua, I bet you, I don't know.
I think a lot of artists are upset with the
Copyright, of course, of
yeah,
using their works to,
because you can tell them like generate this photo in the style of this person. I think a lot of people are upset at that because the AI is basing its work on the body of work of people that
Yeah.
are not being credited for it. So
Yeah.
it's interesting, right?
Yeah, and also I think Italy has now banned completely ChatGPT. The overall, so basically, if you are approaching it from a IP from Italy, it will not be accessible to you. However, of course, there is VPN, so people can always cheat and access it from a different API, from a different IP.
Yeah.
So yeah, regulation is starting to come, but currently it's very negative. It's kind of don't use it, you know. First of all, it's very hard to enforce. Once it's out of the box, it's very hard to put it back in.
Yeah.
And I don't know how people will adapt. Maybe 6 months will help teachers find ways of creatively using it. Like, I think I can use it. I think my colleagues are using the code generator because it can also generate computer code, and it's quite good. Actually, there is a Copilot is another generative AI program which actually works like search. You type what you want, and it search from the tons of libraries, code libraries. It will pull one which is just for you, or it will generate one, and it's quite good and it works. So it's very convenient. It will make coding so much faster. Now again, the interesting with coding is that students still will have to test it to see if it works, because just like with the references, it may be fake, it may not work.
Yeah.
Currently, Copilot is quite good for simple tasks. It works always for the standard tasks, and these are the tasks which you give to students at assignments.
The stuff they already know.
This is something which is like textbook stuff, easy stuff. But when it comes to more complicated stuff, then it may not be doing so well, and then it depends on the programmer to evaluate it, to check it, to make sure that this code can be plugged into a larger piece of code and can do what it's expected to do, and it doesn't cause problems. Now, the problem is if students are trained to rely on Copilot, will they be able to develop these critical skills of what can go wrong and how to evaluate how good this code is and how it fits? And now it's a question, but on the other side, we have been there, already. When I started programming, we programmed Fortran, which was on a punch card. It was one line per card. It was slow, wow. And at that time we were very close to the machine. Every program, every function, you had to write it yourself. There were no libraries from which to fetch ready code and to plug it in. And we learned to use libraries and to rely on the code developed by others. Rely that the input and the output are very clearly defined, and you don't care what happens inside, how it produces the output. You trust the code.
Right.
And you step one level higher and you learn to construct a bigger program based on these bricks of codes which are generated by somebody else, which are created by somebody else. Maybe it will be possible, and it will be very convenient. It will raise up the skill of programming to a much more higher and creative level, where you work with ready elements and basically masterfully assemble them together. Or even the master plan for assembling together, probably ChatGPT can do it for a more standard software kind of task. So I can see that many programming jobs will disappear as well. And we'll see kind of more like architects who just monitor very high-level designers, and Low-level stuff will be done. Just like in factories, they're done by robots, What is left in the engineering a new car is basically the new model. When you make the new model of the car, there's some design, creative design, which is still done by humans. Maybe in the future this will also be done by AI. It's kind of everything is rising on a higher level.
Yeah. The creative part is very interesting because like you were saying earlier, there are AIs that can generate creative work. But it's also interesting because it's still at the point where you still have to give it a query. You have to ask it to do something. Like I wonder at what point will they just start working on their own, deciding what they want to answer.
Yeah, well, creativity is a complicated thing, right? Because our current notion of creativity is combining things together, which people have not combined before, right? And this AI already can do it, probably at the same level, or even maybe in the digital world. Information on a digital scale can probably do it as well as humans, because they have access to more information than any individual human has. So it could recombine more things, more distant things. Potentially, I'm not sure if this is the case yet. I don't know. But theoretically, I don't see why this should be. What is so unique in human creativity that could not be done by AI? Humans, one definition of intelligence is the ability to see patterns, to discover patterns. And even, if you take there are some textbooks on how to be creative, and creativity is seeing patterns in a mosaic, for example, a floor mosaic. If you see that those stones on the mosaic form a face, for example, or a picture, this shows you a creative person, more than if you just see stones, separate stones. Or taking a brick, for example, and how many different uses of a brick can you think of? If you think more than 25 different uses of brick. Now, what is this? This is analytic skill. Like, how many different properties a brick has? It's a hard object, so you can stand on it, or you can put it use it as a pillow if you wrap it with something soft, or you can use it to write, because the brick usually is soft. You can scratch it and it leaves a trail, so you can write with it. Or you can break it, you can use it as a karate, I don't know, you can come with different creative uses of a brick. So this is analytical skills. Pulling out features of objects is another feature of creativity. Well, computers can do all of these things, right? So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe we humans will invent some other ways to be creative. And maybe the area where we will still remain unique and not matched by computers is the interpersonal, emotional care part of being. A computer cannot care really. It can talk to you in a caring way, but it cannot hug you. So these things are remain to be human. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. You've been in the computer science field for long enough that you were able to code with punch cards, and now you're seeing Chat GPT-4 and what it can do. What's that been like? Just going from that point where everything is literally handwritten to now where you can have a novel transcribed for you in seconds.
Well, I think I've been lucky to live in a very interesting time. Like this has been, and to be involved in the most interesting part of development. I started with math. From math, I went to computer science. From computer science, actually, I picked applied AI because I found this most interesting. I was not interested in AI per se, reproducing human intelligence, but I wanted to see how this could be helpful for people. So my PhD was in the area of AI and education, building a tutor system. At that time already there were educational systems, but they were worked like this. You click next, 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 and it shows you a screen after screen after screen. Basically it was like flipping the page of a book.
I remember doing those in school.
Yeah. So we wanted to make these systems more personalized, more adapted to the pace of the student, not only branching, like asking a question to check if the student has understand something and then go back. If they answer wrong, then turn them back one page back, read it again. Oh, not like this, but to explain in different ways. So my PhD thesis was on a system which was teaching how to solve integrals, mathematics problems, because this is easier formalizable. There are different algorithms you can use to ways in which you can integrate simple mathematical functions. This is the level of calculus, first year engineering calculus or mathematics. I developed a system which was able to trace a student's solution, having a menu of options. They can pick an option and it was able to trace. Even if they pick an option and go further on, it was able to find out where in the solution they are, and then either return them when they get wrong. It will even either get them back to the right step or to send them to a different path to solve the problem if they're in a dead end, if they had chosen inappropriate way to solve the problem. So it was giving them some freedom to solve the problem, not to guide them to a strict path, but just to allow them to explore a little bit and then show them the right way if they really need a lot of help. Otherwise, try to give them one step back and so on.
So is that kind of like a decision tree?
Like a decision, yes. It was planning all possible routes of solving the problem, and then it was passively tracing if the student is following one of those routes, and then if the student needs help, if they give them that, it will give them help along this route. But if the route leads to nowhere, it will suggest that you better choose some other route, so that they don't get stuck into and frustrated and so on. So I expanded this thing to a more higher level to teach other areas of math and in the area of calculus. So, and then further on to planning, instruction, curricular planning, and so on. So education is a great area because you have to understand how people think, where they're likely to make errors, to be able to support them without telling them the answer right away, because you want them to learn it and not to give them the answer. And in a way, I see, this was 30 years ago when I did this work, I see this reproduced, this problem now, when we have explanations. In the FATE class, which I'm teaching, fairness, accountability, transparency is the T in FATE, transparency. How do we explain how the AI works? Will an explanation help a user not to overtrust the system and to take the responsibility? Maybe a judge who is about to keep a particular prisoner in prison because the system suggests so, maybe they should get explanation which tells them, well, you better be careful because the system is biased towards this particular population. Right. May have a negative bias towards this population. So how to build an explanation for the recommendation, which is understandable, first of all, because it's so complicated that even the creators of the algorithm cannot predict exactly what decision it will come to. They cannot explain why this exact decision was what the system recommends, right? So this is the one big challenge. They're black box, these algorithms. How to explain them? On the other side, um, you can create another explanation which you take already the solution and you build an explanation. Once you have the solution, it's easier to build an explanation why this is the why this is the solution which the system has come to, without retracing the actual way the system came to this solution. This is actually which psychologists say that now this is kind of a more modern trend in psychology, cognitive psychology, that people think like this. Actually, they make decisions because of gut feelings and of very deep mechanisms which are not what they explain their decision for. They actually they make decisions based on their gut, and then they explain them using their brain.
They work backwards.
They work backwards. Once they find the solution, they justify why this is a good solution to convince others and or to convince themselves even, that this is a good solution. But they take the decision with their gut. So this is easier to do. There are algorithms for this to do, but it may be misleading, right? Because maybe the solution is not the right solution. This assumes that the solution is the right solution. But maybe this black box mechanism has made a mistake. Maybe it was biased. So then what you're doing, you're reinforcing it. So it all links back to 30 years ago research on how to explain, how do the system teach the user. So there is a lot of parallel, and these are fundamental questions in AI which have not changed. The technology has developed already very sophisticated methods which really look intelligent. I think probably the current AI will pass the Turing test. The Turing test, have you heard about this?
Yeah.
So the system can totally convince you that it's a human talking to you. It's hard to trick it.
It definitely could to me. You could convince me pretty easily.
It depends how many times you try it. Maybe sometimes it will start hallucinating and talking nonsense, but generally I think it will. On the other side, how the interface between the AI and the human, I think, is the most interesting thing, and this comes into different levels. How the AI system interacts with individual human, and what responsibility the AI versus the human can take. How explainable, how comprehensible it is, and whether the users care for the explanation. If we take the economical approach, people really don't want to think too much. Who reads the privacy policies? Who reads the license agreements of software? They click install, and then they happily divulge all of their data to the companies which own these apps and so on. So will people really care about this? If the AI explains its solutions, or will they be happy to delegate the work to the AI? So this is one level. And then what happens on a larger scale in society? One of the biggest concerns is job loss. How many jobs will be lost because of this? Technology has always evolved to take away bad jobs, boring jobs or heavy physical labor jobs and so on. But it has always been limited to particular professions, maybe to particular branches of human activity. But for example, farming here in Saskatchewan, in the past there were many farms because there was no technology to work really big areas. Now you can run a farm of thousands of acres with big machines. You don't need so many people anymore. You need maybe 2 or 3 farmhands to run all of this machinery. So these jobs have been eliminated. What happened with the people? They moved to the cities, they took factory jobs. Well, then automation eliminated a lot of factory jobs. What happened to the people? I don't know what happened to the people. They took other jobs, they requalified, they learned other skills. The problem is when right now with ChatGPT being so universal and systems like this taking suddenly so many jobs at once, what will happen with all these people? What will they do? And is the state rich enough to support these people? No, I don't think so. You see, the government has enough money to support healthcare, but basically not much else, right? Who will pay salaries to these people? How will these people, universal income? People were talking about universal income before COVID, and now it's kind of faded away because there's no money, right? And maybe the big productivity which these systems will allow to generate money, but to pay and to create universal income for everybody, but will this happen? I don't know. This is outside of my area. I'm not a political scientist or economist, but I think these are really big concerns which currently economists, banks and companies are like self-interested people, right? You can think of a company as a person, and they want to save costs. So when it's about competition and survival, they will have no moral qualms, you know. The first people who were fired by Google and Facebook were their ethics branches, their ethics units. Human resources, all these people go, you know, it's bare bones, and they go into the competition with, they try to save costs in every possible way. That's what companies do. And that's what their stakeholders want, right? Stakeholders have invested money for the companies to be profitable. So they will not keep workers who don't do nothing. So there is a point in this letter, you know, to postpone, to take time, but I don't think that 6 months will be enough to figure it out.
6 months seems like a really short amount of time too, especially when it's not like there's 10 people that you need to get agreement on. There's quite a bit of minds and governing bodies and politicians that would need to be a part of that discussion. Seems like 6 months is
a very short time.
Yeah.
Plus, with the current situation, you know, a global political situation, it's the level of competitiveness of different countries, right? It's global competition. If you block this technology in one country and other countries vigorously develop it, they will take a lead. And currently, the situation is such. Who can afford to block it?
Yeah, it looks like AI seems to be too, that it could be a winner takes all situation too, because it's so efficient and can become such an exponential rise that it might be that the first player that gets everybody's hands on their product might be the one that it's just their product for everybody.
Yes.
You know?
But I think there is hope, and the hope is that everybody should be thinking as hard as possible. How can they use the technology in a creative way, in a way in which they master it? They use it as a tool rather than they delegate to it. So I read some article recently which was that there are now very well paid jobs, like in 6-digit job per year jobs, which are for firing the right queries into ChatGPT. So maybe companies will be hiring people who can make the right queries, because it's not necessarily the first query which you fire does not necessarily yield good results. You need to work with it, to keep a dialogue with it. So this would be people who develop skills in working with this technology to make it produce really meaningful, useful results. So maybe this will be the next skill which the, writers, painters, English majors, political scientists and lawyers will have to do, how to use this technology to the best benefit of, and being able to evaluate the result it generates and make it generate better results, how to make it self-improve. Again, the fear is that it learns so fast that it may, the next version of ChatGPT may outsmart. Can we compete with it? Right?
Do you do any research in that area about how to ask the best questions?
Well, we are playing with it. I'm not doing formal research on it,
Fair enough.
but we are playing with it with my students, and my colleagues as well. They're trying to see the how they can use. For example, can you generate good exam questions on the material with ChatGPT? It can generate very good questions. Can you? But maybe the answers which it puts for these questions are not good. So then will it be multiple choice or no? Probably not multiple choice, because if you give all set of wrong answers to the question, then it... So you have to be watchful, if you ask it to generate questions. Yeah. But many companies do. Like, for example, Duolingo, they now have a English test, right? You can take... our students, even when they take TOEFL, to international students, when they come to our university, they can take also the Duolingo test.
Okay.
Duolingo is using AI to generate unique questions for students. And
so it's not the exact same exam for...
No, it's not the exact. No, it's not the same. It's not the same exam. Everybody gets different questions, and they're generated. And they have a research unit which is actually deeply digging into how to generate fair exams, exams which are adapted to the native language of the person who is taking the English. Fairness, accountability, all of these are very responsible. Responsible AI is a very important thing. They actually very recently wrote a paper about this, responsible AI for generating English tests. So companies are working, companies who are using this as part of their business are developing these policies and rules which need to be followed. The question is, when you make it generally available for everybody, with all the fake information, when everybody jumps using it, you can imagine the amount of fake news which will appear, and the fake videos and everything, the disinformation, the fragmentation, all of these negative processes which we saw on social media will be amplified by these AI tools. That's what I see as the immediate big danger.
Yeah. It'll be quite saturated, I think. It'll be it's going to be much harder to sift through what is worth reading and worth believing. And it'll be quite the problem.
So it will have companies, again, like Facebook and so on, they have to create AI tools to distinguish fake videos and automatically generated text to block it. The problem is it possible to spot it really well or not? I don't know about this. I see that there are already tools advertised which supposedly catch, but I haven't seen articles reporting the results, how good they are in spotting fakes, and whether companies will want to use them, because their incentives are set into getting out engaging content, and if the content is engaging, the companies have interest to have this content because it will result in more shares, more clicks, and they will get paid for it. Right? So how to set up the incentives that it discourages companies or it penalizes companies for spreading fake content. Companies are fighting massively against this, of course, because this is their bread and butter.
Yeah. They need to get views, right? That's what they sell advertising at the end of the day. They need people to use their platforms.
Yes.
So, Do you approach any companies, or do companies approach you at all to discuss these things?
No. Well, I don't know. I think they have their own units, research units, which apparently now very recently they have been firing from most people have been fired from that units, from Google and Facebook, but I think this is in the media now. This is, I don't think that they're consulting researchers anymore. I think it's mostly journalists, and they're very good articles actually. Canadian press, the Globe and Mail, nearly every week they have at least 2 or 3 articles on these topics. Like yesterday was a big centerpiece, which was well written, and I have been following it since January. You know, they have had really good articles on this. Our journalists are really good.
How many of those articles do you think are written by ChatGPT?
I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so. But I follow a Bulgarian humorous newspaper, and they had they published yesterday entirely ChatGPT generated insert of funny articles generated by ChatGPT, and it was really funny and it was really good.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's so funny that like every time I see it, it blows my mind. I'm like, this was written by a machine, you know, and things like that. Like it can make you laugh, you know. You can, wow. So, in one of your focus areas is persuasive technologies. Is that correct? Can you explain that a little bit more to me?
Persuasive technologies are technologies which try to help users achieve their goals using persuasive techniques or gamification techniques, game techniques. So they are following research from social psychology, which mostly was, well, not exclusively, but a lot of it was developed in the area of advertising. Why people do things, how can you persuade people to do certain things or to buy products. Yeah, this research has been going on since the 60s, and they have developed many different methods. And they have been, so persuasive technology as a research area aims to apply these techniques in applications for helping people live healthier, mostly their health-oriented applications. And it's a huge domain because you have all these trackers, activity trackers, which can also give you advice. They can nudge you to stand and walk if you have been sitting for a long time, to drink water, to sleep well, to monitor your sleep, and to go to bed at a certain time, not to drink too much coffee. So all of these, plus more recently also there are applications which try to help you fight addictions. Like for example, one of my students developed application for making people aware of their drinking. It was developed for students in high school here in Saskatchewan to be aware of what a particular unit of one drink means in different kinds of drinks, and to be conscious of how much they're drinking, what is responsible, and to reduce. Actually, we experimented this not with students but with just general on the web, and we found that actually it helped to reduce their drinking levels measured by a tool from the World Health Organization.
Okay, wow,
yeah,
very
so
nice.
it was quite effective.
And that was an app?
It was an app, yes, it was an app on the phone, and basically it makes you, first of all, aware. It gives you little nuggets, like educational application, explains you what is a single drink, and how, like for example, in hard alcohol it will be 50, in a beer it's, I forgot how much it is, like 150, wine is 100, so what is a standard drink, and then how many drinks you have, because people are not aware. They think it's the same, and you can easily get completely intoxicated with. So and all the effects of mixing alcohol and all of these things. So it's educational. On the other side, it has game elements, quizzes, and also it allows you to monitor yourself. So every drink you get, you can count it, and then it will tell you. It can also call a taxi for you if you're at a party, so that you don't get into a car with somebody who has drunk, or you try to drive and things like this. So it was a master's work, but. Again, if you want to make this thing commercial, you have to start a company or get somebody to do it. So it was just experimental app. It was effective, but there are so many others. There are, for example, for social media addiction, applications which measure your time on social media and, for example, tell you how much time you have lost. And when you get aware of the time loss, you may be more likely to limit it. It gives you advice of what to do. Leave your phone in a different room, or switch off notifications, the pings, and so on.
Some of them have them built in, actually. Like, excuse me. Sometimes when you're scrolling on TikTok, if you've been on TikTok for quite a while, you'll get one of the videos will be from TikTok saying like, hey, maybe you should get off TikTok for a while. And it's funny. It's like almost positively shameful. It's happened to me a couple of times. I'm like, if even TikTok is telling me to stop watching videos, maybe I should go do something else for a bit.
Because we like binge watching, and we lose idea of time, and that's a problem. And my phone, for example, allows me to limit the time on a particular app. So I have only half an hour on Facebook here. So after half an hour, you cannot use it today anymore.
That's funny. Is Facebook your poison?
Yeah, I'm old generation. So I haven't switched to TikTok though. Resisting.
Well, I would hold out as long as you can if I was you. It's very, very addicting.
It's a poison, yeah. Well, they want now to block it in many countries, actually. They want to stop it completely.
Yeah, they're trying very hard.
Yeah.
Huh. It's interesting.
But the problem is, it's not going to solve the problem. Once people have tasted the poison, they'll move somewhere else. There will be another app which will just be like TikTok. Instagram is quite addictive as well. I have a lot of my students are from different countries. They seem to be mostly on Instagram. It's so many. WeChat is a very popular app in China. So people will find a way to get their dopamine if they tend to be addicted. So how to fight addictions, how to get organized, they will constantly need this. It's not a one-time solved problem. It will constantly be there. So this is what persuasive technology is about. But of course, there is persuasive technology applied massively for not so good purposes as well. In e-commerce, there are dark patterns. You've maybe heard this term. Now, we don't call this persuasive technology because the definition of persuasive technology is that it should not use manipulation. Manipulation is when the user is not aware of something.
Okay.
Like when they're exploiting cognitive biases. Cognitive biases, everybody has biases. And if the technology exploits biases, then it will be considered manipulative. So it's dark pattern. But for example, you have probably seen how hard it is to quit Amazon Prime. So if you have Amazon Prime and if you decide to quit it, you have to go through, I don't know.
Oh, yes, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
8 or 10 screens. You have to click. Are you sure? Here is what you're going to lose. Then you move to a screen where the most visible option is something else, not quitting.
Sometimes they don't even let you do it on your phone. You have to actually go to a computer.
To a computer to do it. Yes. So this is one big challenge. This is a dark pattern.
Okay.
Many companies are using this. Actually, it's massively used to keep people paying. And there are many others. But we wouldn't call this thing persuasive technology. It's just a definition. We try to keep it clean. But gamification is a way to get people engaged for participation. I've been exploring this a lot because in my career about 17 years ago, I was really interested in how to collaborative learning environments. I was still in intelligent learning environments, intelligent tutoring systems, and supporting learners. And at that time, actually, it was this was kind of like a wave, there. Ideas which become very infectious in the research area. So collaborative learning was the hype idea, and I really thought that it's not good to have a learner learning from a computer only. They have to be able to communicate with other people. You have to be in a community and people learn together. And actually, even better, people learn from their peers better. If you have understood something, and somebody, your friend, has not understood it, he will most likely understand better from your explanation than from the explanation of an expert.
Right, yeah.
Because you have a similar mindset, you're at the same level somehow. So anyway, this was a very exciting idea. And when I came here to Canada, my research was on a peer help system, which actually was supporting students to help each other with assignments, with not cheating, not sharing ready solutions, but just helping with particular problem when a student gets stuck. And the problem was people didn't want to participate. So well, those students who knew how to solve the assignment, who were the early ones, who were the organized, why should they spend their time helping people who are in the last minute and who have not done anything, are completely stuck?
Right.
Why should they waste their time with this, right? Now, there is a reason. You can persuade them by saying that actually you learn material better when you explain it to somebody else. Actually, this is the best way to learn something. Explain it to somebody else. That's what I tell to my graduate students as well. You may believe that you understand it, but the real test is when you have to explain it to another person. So this could be one motivation for people who really like to learn. But there are a lot of students who are good students, but they learn because they want to pass the test and they want to get a good grade, and they don't really care so much about the material. So how do you engage these people as well? So we introduced kind of a economic system to pay them for the effort, like paid tutors. So they will get points, they will earn points in the system, and then they can cash these points in particular rewards. And actually this really raised the participation level.
Yeah, I bet, yeah.
Rewards are a very exciting thing. People like to do this. They will do a lot of work if there is some reward. And the reward doesn't need to be money. It can be glory. They could be just the biggest helper, the most... Yeah.
Like having a leaderboard.
The leaderboard, yes. Of here is the most helpful person in the class.
Yeah.
So, well, this was back in '99, right? Yeah. Gamification as a field did not exist at all. Computer games were in their infancy yet, and especially multiplayer games. They were starting to develop because of the web, allowing more people. Before, the games were individual, only one-on-one game, you and the computer, but the web created possibility to play games together. So around 2002, 2003, we created a system which actually was very sophisticated system, which rewarded students for contributing materials and links related. Like, for example, in my fate class, a system like this could be quite useful nowadays because there is so much articles appearing in the popular media about the different social effects of AI, about unfairness, about transparency, about all of the concerns. So it's very hard for the instructor to keep track of everything, but if you have a class of 30, they are reading a lot, they are subscribed to different channels and so on, they can get and share links to relevant articles in the class.
Right,
so it was called Comtella, this system, and we
Comtella?
Comtella, yes. This was created 2002, 2003, and I was teaching ethics and not AI, ethics in computer science. It was a fourth year class, and I got my students to use this system and to share links, and we integrated rewards. We integrated not exactly a leaderboard, because I didn't want to have real competition. The moment you put real competition, people start cheating.
Yeah.
You have people who immediately start dumping anything just to maximize their metrics. So we created a leaderboard which was using a metaphor like a star sky, and some of the stars were big fat stars, so these are people who shared a lot of links. Some of them were very bright stars. These were people with few links which got a lot of high ratings from the students, really good links. And so people were competing in 2 dimensions, who will share the best articles and who are sharing the most articles. And you can have some big and bright stars, and you could have some little brilliant little stars. So this was a very successful system, and it was in a way not really gamified in a simplistic way, right? It was, however, very rewarding, and we adapted the rewards as well to the quality of contributions, to discourage people to dump a lot of not good links.
Yeah, you want something that's going to be helpful, right?
To be interesting and helpful and bringing something more and so on. So yeah, this was a gamification, and it was a persuasive system. Like it really managed, it doubled participation basically in the system. And so it was very successful system, yes. So this was it. And then from there, I moved to persuasive technologies, which are kind of more general, not just by rewards and by reputation, but also using emotional appeal or other approaches like reciprocity. Like you contribute to the community, but you also gain from the community. So if you see a nudge or a message which tells you that you have gained so much from this community, would you like to contribute or something like this? Yeah. Maybe people will. And there are many other strategies which have been applied. There, the famous Cialdini 6, now 7 strategies. Like he added one additional strategy for.
I'm not familiar with that.
Cialdini. So this is a social psychologist who developed them back in, I think, in the 80s. This famous book about influence, right? How to influence people, and he defined several strategies. There were 6 originally. So first of all is authority. People, if somebody from authority recommends something, people are more likely to follow than if anybody does it. So this is logical. Another one is reciprocity. So people will pay favors to each other. So if somebody has done you a favor, you're likely to return the favor. So for example, emphasizing how much you have gained from something, or giving a free offer in e-commerce situation. If you give a freebie, it kind of creates a implicit obligation. Because you got the freebie, maybe you're more likely to buy something from this company because they gave you something as a present. So reciprocity. Another one is social influence. This is a very powerful one. People follow what other people are doing. So if you observe that, for example, you buy the stuff on Amazon which has the highest rating. Most people have rated it high. So you follow the crowd, basically. Another one is scarcity. People value things which are hard to get. So if something has the allure that it's exquisite, people want it more. They're ready to pay more money for it. So in advertisement, it's used a lot. This was a famous example how the black pearls, when they were discovered in the South Pacific, nobody knew what they are, and they had no value. So they were actually, you could get them for pennies down in the islands. So somebody, very entrepreneurial guy, decided to make a big business out of them. So he discussed with a guy in Tiffany's to put them where the real pearls and the diamonds are, and put them there with a high price. And people say, oh, if this is at Tiffany, at this particular place, it must be very unique, very rare, or it's different from the rest. So people were ready to pay even higher price than the regular pearl.
Yeah, of course, right.
Yeah, because it's considered as very scarce. What else? Did I miss something? Yeah.
I wasn't counting how many. Have you heard of the company Supreme? Supreme, it's like a clothing brand. They did that. They used scarcity. I'm not sure if they still do, and I'm not sure how they operate now, but a lot of their products were very simple, but very, very expensive. Like it'd just be like a sweatshirt that said Supreme on it. But they would what they would do is they would tell everybody that it's going to be available for sale on this day and this day only.
Yeah.
So they would
Yeah.
I can't remember, they had a name for it, but you could only, everything that they were selling was unique and you could only get it for a limited amount of time.
Yeah.
So they would sell everything out because people were just like,
Yeah.
oh, I have to get it. I'm not going to be able to get it the next day. So.
Scarcity. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's the scarcity. Yeah. That's and then the fear of loss. Oh, that's the other one.
Mm.
The fear of loss, which is basically the FOMO, the fear of missing out,
Yeah.
which makes us come back, the loss. We are far more afraid of losing something than if we have the choice to buy the same thing. Maybe we wouldn't, but if we have it already, we don't want to lose it.
Yeah.
So it's a cognitive bias, and it can be used, it's a very powerful, and it can be used in exploitative way. So your example is a very good example. On the other side, I can see that, for example, just now association, as we're talking about this, maybe this is a future for normal, not human generated art. Maybe artists will be able to sell their art in this way. Human, guaranteed, human generated, not computer generated, only available between 8 and 9 in the morning on a Sunday.
Yeah.
For $millions of dollars.
I'm sure it'll happen. Yeah.
But you can see it already,
Yeah.
you see that, for example, organic food is more expensive. Handmade things are more expensive than factory-made things. If it's hand-knitted pullover, even it's very ugly, maybe much more expensive than a machine-made, prettier one. Still, because the other one is handmade.
Yeah, people really value that human creativity and craftsmanship. I think because it is scarce and unique. It's not like a machine can just replicate something over and over and over again. So it kind of dilutes the value of it. Whereas when people think of like a nice Swiss watch, they think about the fact that it was made by somebody by hand. They put everything together.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, exactly.
Very interesting.
Exactly. I know. I knitted a pullover for my grandchild last year, and I totally appreciate what amount of work it is. I'm not a good knitter. I've knitted 30 years ago, and doing it again. Oh my God, it was hard. It was hard. I had to watch so many videos how to do it because I've forgotten everything, and it took me probably 3 months to produce this little 7-year-old pullover. And I guess, I don't know even if he wears it because it's prickly wool, but it's handmade and it's from me, and I've invested so much time and effort. So if I have to price it, it will be very expensive. Yes. If you count my time, what I'm normally paid, priceless. Yeah.
Well, that's a big deal. People value that. Like there's I don't know why. I can't really think of a reason, but yeah, just when you have something, that, especially if it's something that somebody you knew made for you, then it's even more valuable because then you have an intimate relationship with the amount of time that they've spent working on that for you.
So maybe this will be a solution. Maybe, as now we are discussing, this brand new idea. Maybe persuasive technology can be used to create and to support jobs of people who are doing things the classical way without automation. Maybe original poems and original art can be marketed at a price which it deserves, and artists and writers and everybody who is involved in creative work and wants to sell this work will be able to sell it at the price they want, rather than in competition with the machine-generated, off-the-mill art, poems, and so on. Even if it looks like Shakespeare, a fake Shakespeare.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that'll be the way things will go. I think there will be even more of a value in human creation.
Yeah.
Emphasizing
the uniqueness and the fact that it is human made rather than machine made. Yeah.
So is there, just to go back a little bit more now, is there a project that you're working on or studying now in terms of persuasive technologies and education specifically? Is there anything?
Actually, yes. I have students. I have a student who is working on explanations for recommender systems, and she is emphasizing the educational part. How do you generate explanations which are educational rather than just trying to justify the solution which the algorithm has come with. And this is quite interesting because it combines, again, it's an original idea because it combines two areas of education and explanations. They're not, so far there hasn't been much work. There has been some work, but not much work in this. And there is a lot of research which has been done in AI and education, how to use AI to explain and to adapt to the learner's cognitive style, to their engagement, to their level of understanding, and all of this personalize, the explanation to something which they will understand, they will associate with, and it will engage them so that they don't ignore it, right? Yeah. So this would be an area of research which would be, I think, quite interesting. So she's just starting, so we'll see how it will develop. I have two other master students who are working. One of them is working on an app to explain if an app is using persuasive techniques and if it is manipulative. So we're starting from dark patterns. So we want to signal if the app is using dark patterns. And we want to see if the users care at all about this explanation. Currently, every app which you did download on the web has explanation of what it does with your data. This is particularly important for Europe with their GDPR. Apps have to do this, but websites also have to explain what they do with the data they collect from your interaction with the app, with the website or the app. I don't know if people actually care to read this at all, or if they just click yes and install the app. We want to see if it does, and if they care about if the app, if they are informed that the app will manipulate them, that it has danger to make them pay more, or that to have in-app purchases, or if it is manipulative in any way, whether they will care to be informed, to and how many of them, after reading this, will not install the app?
Yeah. Will it actually change their choice?
Will they change their choice? Do people care? Next, we'll see how can we persuade people using persuasive technology to care about this. Can we educate them? Again, it's persuasion and education are very related. I think ethical persuasion is education rather than just trying to nudge the user into something subconsciously.
Right.
You have to make them understand why the system is doing this thing and still give them the choice, informed choice. Just like the principle of informed consent. The user needs to know. One big concern is that the users may not care, knowing how people, many people do care, but there are a lot of people who really don't care, and especially younger users, teenagers and younger children. For them, this is just like a obstacle.
Yes, yeah.
They don't care about this. So how can we make people care? I think this is an important part. How do we convince people that they should not surrender to persuasion? They shouldn't surrender to manipulation. They shouldn't surrender to fakes, and so on. I have a line of research on fake news. This is a very dangerous part for society, for propaganda, manipulations. Now we're living in a world where it's massively going on, and it's funded by governments, right? So it's not they have as much money as companies have. It's a serious business, and now armed with tools like ChatGPT, they don't rely anymore just on stupid trolls who generate stupid, easily recognizable things. These trolls will be using ChatGPT to generate intelligent, convincing narratives and very convincing fakes.
Yeah.
And this is a big danger. How to counter it? I don't have a solution right now. There are many different ways. You can just block things, but how blocking individual users or blocking individual sites, it's hard. We live in a democratic society. We have freedom of speech. How do you do this?
Yeah.
In dictatorship, it's easy. You just block the site, and still, even they cannot do it because they have VPN.
Yeah, people can get access outside.
Yeah, exactly. So the solution should be to make people care, to make people watchful, to create a signal for people to recognize that this is questionable. Don't trust this. Don't trust it 100%. Trust it maybe 50% to 60%.
There's some skepticism.
To have, yeah, exactly. And it's, in a way, it's education. And, that's my concern, again, going back to this letter for the now 2,000 people who have now signed a letter to block development of these algorithms for 6 months. 6 months is definitely not enough to educate societies.
Yeah, unfortunately not.
Yeah, to educate and to install laws, to create the mechanisms for companies to monitor. It will take much more than 6 months. Now, do we block them? Currently, as technology has developed, usually you release the technology, you kind of crowdsource it. You release the technology, let people use the technology and learn from experience, like it's a collective learning experience. Society as a whole learns from the experience, what works, what doesn't work, what is dangerous, at the cost of bad things happening, right? And we learn, and then we gradually build these laws to ban things which are outright bad.
Yeah.
And it will take, this collective learning experience will take years and will take a lot of victims.
Yeah.
And is the society ready to pay the cost? Right? What will be the cost? What will be the cost? It will be social division, political instability because of this. People, teenagers glued to computers, people addicted and becoming passive because they don't know what to trust anymore. People not participating in the democratic process apart from the very radical ones. The rest say, I don't know, I'm confused, I don't know anything. So this is the danger, really. It's kind of a political danger, most of all. Maybe because I've been working in social computing, and that's why I see kind of as the biggest danger the social effects, the individual effects as well, addictions, and this kind of passiveness, accepting things is another danger. But again, it depends on people. It depends how people will use the technology. If people are willing to take it as a challenge and creatively think about ways to use it, to outsmart the technology and to use it in a creative way. For example, if you write an article, I don't think it's a bad thing to use ChatGPT to put a bunch of ideas first. And then take these and maybe add some more, maybe have several iterations to see if it can generate something more, or you can add some of your ideas and start. But just instead of staring at the white screen, which is, it's very hard to start writing something from scratch. Get it started using ChatGPT, but then be creative and use it as a tool to make your own article or your own.
You got to remember to do the intellectual legwork yourself. Just use it as a tool. Yeah. There's a lot of very important questions that won't be answered in 6 months. So
that's it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, there's one more area I wanted to ask you about, and that was
oh, okay.
Just real quick. You do some work in trying to get more women involved in computer science.
Yes.
Yeah. What does that look like?
What does it look like? It's up and down. It's all the time going up and down. It was there were a lot of women in computer science back in the. Actually, when computers started, programming was a women's job. The men were all in engineering. This was the real computer science, was the computer.
Okay.
And women were doing the unimportant part, the coding. Then it kind of gradually evolved as a coding, as a very interesting part, and a part which was also making a lot of money. And that's when suddenly it became men's thing. Like men moved into this area, and women... I don't know. When I was a student, programming was considered women's job, just like knitting. It was women's job. But Bulgaria was a bit behind. It was about maybe 10 years behind in the attitudes. In the West already. I think around the 80s, there was, again, with the personal computers, and this is probably my generation as well, there was a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of students, and a lot of women as well in computer science, also in the West, in Canada. But when I came to Canada in 1990, I was really surprised to see there were so few. Even back when I went to Germany, I was the only woman in the department. When I came here, I was the only woman in the department. And our students, we had about maybe 15-16% of women, and then it dropped down. It was gradually dropping down until maybe it started climbing up maybe 10 years ago. A lot of effort was put. I had a chair for women in science and engineering, which was to promote computer science and to science and engineering in general to girls and women. And there were very few girls. In computer science, there were so few that... And again, you preach to the converted already. The social attitude was that this stuff is boring, that there is not much to do there, and that there is much more interesting was psychology. Everybody was going in psychology. Sociology, these humanities and social sciences were much more exciting. And they are very exciting. I'm also very excited in these areas as well, but there were much more jobs for women in computers. In computer science in particular, it's so much easier to get a job as a woman because all companies wanted to hire women. Diversity is really important. Women bring a lot of different perspectives. But that was the case. So now after the end of my chair, with the rise of AI, actually, it's a very interesting correlation. It seems that, first of all, enrollments in computer science completely correlate with the public interest in AI. Whenever there is an interest in AI, we get a lot of students. Like right now, our classrooms are exploding. We have thousands of students. Everybody wants to do AI. Everybody wants to do computer science, and more girls as well were coming. Much more in numbers, percentage-wise, not that different actually.
Okay.
Even some statistics say they're fewer because a lot more men want to do computer science. So the numbers are growing, but the ratio is not much different. So anyways, women, I couldn't convince my own daughter to go to computer science. This was back in 2006 when she was graduating from high school. She went into neuroscience, so this was more interesting, but there are no jobs there. Like as a neuroscientist, it's really hard to get a job. It's kind of a in-between area between psychology and medicine.
Yeah, it's very niche.
It's a big area. It's a very interesting area, but academic jobs, it's hard to find professor jobs there. And with a PhD in neuroscience, hard. But well, it will. I hope it will change. I think there will be. I don't know actually how it will develop. I don't know how science will develop in general. whether there will be a lot of faculty jobs in the future or not.
Yeah, who knows?
With ChatGPT again, who knows how it will be. And the funding, general funding of universities is not good anywhere, both in the States and here. Governments with this demographics, it seems most attention and most money goes for healthcare, right? The needs are there, and education does not get enough money. Yeah, so that's a problem.
Yeah, well, we just did 2 hours.
2 hours, wow. This is probably the record long.
Yeah, it is actually. No, this was great. Yeah. I guess, where can people find your work if they want to see what your research or?
Well, they can Google me.
Okay.
Julita Vassileva is, I think it's, they can find me quite easily.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much. I learned a lot. That was a great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure, and I wish you good luck with other teachers.
Thank you.
Outside of the teaching.
Thank you. All right.